Hi, everyone. Deborah Hamilton. Hi, Susan. Hi, Connie. I'm so grateful to be here. I have been racing around all day because, of course, tomorrow's the big Lego day. And Junie had to go to hunting camp. And my girlfriend, Carolyn, brought him to hunting camp. And I have to tell you that she took a picture and it was as if he was going off to the guillotines. So he made me feel really good, even though I know once he's there, he's going to be happy, sort of like kids going to summer camp. However, not good. So it's Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law and Mediation, soon to be Hamilton ADR, North Carolina. And of course, this is my wonderful MAAP community call. And I have to tell you, I had 3 calls today for people who want to make a MAAP plan. I wish they would come to our MAAP community call because they would learn so much for free. However, I'm happy to let you pay me to do what I do every Wednesday night for free. So I'm just saying it's interesting and I understand. But before I start, I have to get on my soapbox, and I apologize. I just sent not furious. Well, I was furious because I was passionate, not furious because I was mad. There was a new case out in New York courts where a judge decided for best for all concerned, which is the term we use here in New York when a dog custody issue comes before the court. And it was a couple who had bought a dog together, lived together with the dog, and then broke up and then shared the dog for a while. But then one of the parties found that the other was unfaithful during their relationship. So they decided not to share the dog anymore. Okay, so 2 months later, they brought the dog to the veterinarian, and the other party was a veterinarian, took the dog home from the veterinarian. So one kept it from the other, right? Because how dare you? You were infidel, you were an infidel, so to speak. And so I'm not going to let you share the dog. And then the other said, well, here's the dog. I'm going to take him home. So the court decided that now listen to this. So what created this issue? This is why I get so passionate. What created this issue? Well, because one guy was mad at the other guy because there was infidelity, right? And so one kept it from the other, and the other, of course, felt perfectly within his rights to take the dog next time he saw him at the vet, which, of course, both were not right. Both were not good. And so the court decided that since one party could stay home with the dog and take it to work, and it would never be alone in the house, never be crated, never have an issue or have to live a minute by itself. That was the best for all concerned. So the dog would stay with the person who would spend most of the time with him. So, of course, as you all know, this will drive me nuts because the caretaking of the dog is different in everyone's home. Nobody's home is exactly like the other person's home. And the caretaking was never an issue until the infidelity came up. They had been sharing the dog for 2 months, and the infidelity was the impetus to keep the dog. The infidelity was the impetus to take the dog from the vet. And why couldn't we have gone to mediation and discussed what the real issue was, which was the infidelity, not sharing the dog? However, the court decided in its great wisdom to award the dog to one party over the other. So I just wrote to a bunch of legal colleagues, and I'm sure that I did apologize at the beginning of the email and again at the end that I was on my soapbox. But I said, so who asked Max? Max didn't mind being with the person who was there all the time. And Max didn't mind being with the person who maybe had to put him in a crate every once in a while or leave him alone, because they love us for who we are. They love us individually for who we are, how we present ourselves. When Junie stays with Jim, he loves Jim. When I'm home, he loves me. But I don't think that if something happened to me, that Junie would suffer because Jim was taking care of him full time. The other issue is, which of course I pointed out, as you all would know, the D's, right? So what happens to this dog if this person dies or becomes disabled? There is nothing in the decision that says, okay, so since the defendant, who lost, by the way, didn't get the dog, if the plaintiff dies or becomes disabled or doesn't have the money to care for the dog at the vet or whatever it is, it's totally silent on that. So, of course, this dog could go to anybody. And what happens if there is nobody? Because the person hasn't made a MAAP plan, right? So the person hasn't said, well, if something happens to me, the best person to take care of it is my ex, because the dog loves my ex. And probably because the ex was, an infidel, then they probably wouldn't give it to them anyway. And that's just, in my opinion, mean-spirited. So I will get off my soapbox now. But for me, that's why you really need to make these MAAP plans while you still like each other, because then you can decide without emotional issues coming into play what's best for Max. Because if you asked Max, he would have preferred going back and forth, very likely, because that's what he was used to. He likes seeing his one parent, he likes seeing his other parent. And I'll never forget that I had a case once where and it was a great case. One woman was a triathlete, and they had a Rhodesian Ridgeback. Now, if you know anything about Rhodesian Ridgebacks, they're high energy dog. She was a triathlete, and the dog went on triathlon trainings with her. It ran, it swam, it, run next to the bike, blah, blah, blah. And her husband liked to watch football and eat Cheetos. So she said, it is so amazing to watch him. He's out there running with me, and then he's sitting sort of on his back in the couch, eating Cheetos with her husband. And so her husband shouldn't get the dog because he feeds him Cheetos and sits on the couch and doesn't exercise him. I mean, let's take that a step further. Then all the homeless people who have dogs shouldn't have them because they're out in the elements. I'm just thinking, I'm getting crazy, but I've just spent 7 minutes, and I apologize, on my soapbox, but it drives me nuts when people don't make a plan for their pet that is in the best interest of their pet, and they're the ones who can do it before, anger comes. So what? Divorce is one of our Ds. Relationship breakup that doesn't start with a D, but I guess, dissolution of a relationship. So there's a D. If you're going to have a pet and you're going to live with someone, please, 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 please decide what's best for the pet and stick with it. Because the pet really does like your ex. I know how horrible that is to think about, but your pet really does like your ex. It's just the way it is. I mean, unless there's animal abuse, which most times there isn't, because both of you are living together and you've just decided not to live together anymore, and the pet is going to go somewhere. If it's better for the pet to stay with A, great. If A can then share the pet with B on vacations or when you travel for business, fabulous. If you want to do week on, week off, fabulous. But decide that now. It'll make such a difference for your pet going forward. Because then, as I put in this email, you can share the cost of veterinary expenses. You can share the cost of kenneling if neither of you can take it and somebody wants to travel. These are all considerations that the court didn't take into consideration because it doesn't. It's not part of they just did a replevin, which means that I'm going to get my property back. And this is personal property. And so they decided what would be in the best interest or what would be the well-being of all. And they decided that the parent or the partner who never put the dog in a crate, there we go, anthropomorphizing animals again, that they can never go in a crate, and didn't leave it alone, was the better parent. So I'm just going to say, drives me nuts, but it is what it is. So on that note, we'll chat about that after I check in with everyone, after I get off my soapbox. But, the MAAP plan is here to help you avoid going to court if your relationship breaks up. So Connie, how are you? How did you do over the weekend?
Well, Casey showed well, and it was his first time since Santa Barbara last summer where he had been indoors and in the great big barn of the LA County Fairplex, which is the biggest echo chamber on earth. He
and was a terrier,
right, and he was spooky the first couple of days, but then by Friday afternoon, Saturday, which was our last time showing, four shows in 3 days, he was much better. So unfortunately, the judges were not putting up his kind of guy or other dogs from his lineage who were like him. So we came out with an award of merit, and that was it. No points. But there are shows, all spring and summer around here. And fortunately, we are now maskless in LA County.
Oh, good.
Which is wonderful. I mean,
yep.
I'm still wearing a mask when I go out and run errands and all the rest of it. But, we were able to go maskless in the show, which was a lot better.
Yeah.
And but I have been, of course, like everybody, watching the horrific war in Ukraine and seeing all the posts on social media about ways to help animals in Ukraine. I have a number of agility friends in my obedience club who have been reporting that the Ukrainian, captain of the Ukrainian agility team made it out across the border into Poland with her 10 dogs. And she had an 8-hour journey, and it was, horribly stressful, needless to say, just because they were worried that the Russians were going to shut down the corridor. But they made it out, made it into Poland, and the Poles have been fantastic in terms of not only taking care of the animals, but taking care of the people, but the animals.
I have to say that, given what happened in 2014 and what's happening now, it just goes to show everyone how internationally pets have been seen as members of the family. So they're allowing animals in every country that people are fleeing from Ukraine without vaccination records, without anything, because they recognize, that people will not flee sometimes because they can't take their animals with them. And they really want to help them get out of harm's way from the crazy man. So they are allowing people to come in with animals, and it's heartwarming and heart-wrenching. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's been on my mind this whole 8 or 9 days that we've been watching this, that what a change the world has made. Because 6 years ago, or more, because it was 14, animals were not allowed to escape and be refugees, and now they are. And just that piece, which goes back to why you need to make a plan for your pet, because otherwise, there's just not going to be something for you to do. So go ahead, Connie.
Well, I was just going to say that in the context of the MAAP plan, this is not a case where you can call up your friend and say, "Oh, by the way, I've been delayed at the airport." Your whole country is being totally destroyed. So,
but in the world, right? So I know in Europe, people go to dog shows in Belgium and in Poland and in Romania and in everywhere, right? So you meet people. And so the dog world would probably open people with 10 dogs with open arms, because they know you're a refugee and they would come. The fact that the country is letting them in is the greatest advantage. And then you just call the Rhodesian Ridgeback Club of Bulgaria or of Romania or of Poland, and I'm sure that everyone is pitching in to help them navigate with their dogs, because it's not easy. So yeah, the MAAP plan, it could work. I'm hoping that we never have a world war that you have to apply the MAAP plan to. But if in fact things like that happen, not only do you need someone 20 miles away from you, make sure you make friends with people in other countries. We never thought this would have to be a conversation on the MAAP plan, but now you have to make friends with people in Canada and people in Mexico, just in case. I'm just saying. Let's hope it doesn't come here, but it seems like there's a very delicate dance being danced, and I'm hoping that we continue to dance in a way that, because it's so horrific. So many people are losing their lives and fighting valiantly, right? And we're standing here, and it's a delicate dance, because if in fact we get involved, what's that bring? What next step does that bring? So it's such a delicate dance. Thanks, Connie. I love your points. Susan, how's Maggie, and how are you doing?
Maggie's doing pretty good. She's such a character. We spilled a little bit of quark on the floor the other day, and my husband went to clean it up, and she nearly bit his hand off because it was food that she wanted. So, she's just an incredible character. I mean, she's not being starved by any means, but her appetite is incredible. And just a little comment about what you're saying about pets now being recognized as part of the family. The courts in the U.S. Consider animals or pets as property and not, they limit compensation based on that concept. And it'll be interesting to see if that's going to be changing, and, you know, in light of what's happening in the world today. And is it, you know, I don't really have a lot of respect for judges, because I don't think they base a lot of their decisions on principles. It's kind of, you know.
Well, unfortunately, they're limited to the law. So when you bring a case, you bring it under a plebin. That's what the law says. They can only work within the law, which is why I said they couldn't, you know, really ask Max what he wanted. They couldn't really, since the case was brought for custody of Max and not because of the infidelity or the stealing, that was a problem. That's always the problem that brings people to, there's always a slight, at least in my office, when people are fighting over the pet, it's because I'm mad at you, or you said something, or you did something, or whatever.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the dog.
Which shouldn't be allowed. It shouldn't be allowed, really. I mean, people shouldn't be allowed to do that. It's,
no, I know, but that's what the court looks at. The
because
court
it
only
clogs
looks at,
up the legal system for cases that are more important, I guess.
unless it's your dog, and then of
Well,
course,
maybe not important is not the right term, but are
No,
more
right.
appropriate for the legal system.
Well, that's why they decide that either Connie or Susan get the dog. They never decide that Connie and Susan will share the dog, because they don't want to enforce it. So they make that arbitrary decision based on the facts that are given to them, based on what they believe is in the best well-being of the dog, of all. Whether or not that truly is, if Max would have raised his hand and said, but I like going to the animal medical center and meeting all the other dogs and staying in a crate, seeing all the people, I like going there. You know, they didn't ask him. They just said, well, if he has to stay in a crate when he goes to work with one of the partners, then that's terrible. You know, he's free and everybody loves him, and he goes.
But he's going to stay in a crate with either party, because there will always be times.
No, she said that one of the parties said, nope, never in a crate. So, you know, and that's that pet ownership. That's that pet ownership thing again. You know, I know that people, some people, and I know that this might be a little bit of a controversial MAAP call, but people will not want to put their pets in a crate. And I get that, but it's not inhumane to do that. In fact, I don't know how you felt, Connie, but when I saw all those dogs and cats in the shelters in Poland and in Romania and everywhere, not in a crate, I said, oh my God, this is a nightmare waiting to happen. Because what if the cat runs across the floor? And if Junie's there, he's on it like ugly on an egg.
Right.
You know, so I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I just wish everybody had a little soft-sided crate. If you have a big dog, of course, you can't have a crate, but then you better have a really good, some of the dogs I saw had muzzles on, which was really smart. Simply because it just protects your dog. Your dog is in, first of all, the energy that's going on there is horrendous. They're going to do things they'll never have done before, because
they're so stressed.
Your energy is bad. Their energy is bad. They're in an incredibly different place. And, you know, we're just thinking. So you're right, Susan. You know, I think judges, and I talked to Matt Cooper, who was the judge who did a very important case here in New York, Travis v. Murray. I spoke to him about 2 or 3 months ago. I'm going to speak to him again. And that decision was in 2013, I believe. And he's the one who coined the for all involved, best interest for all involved, right? And they think that's the seminal case. And I said to him, Judge Cooper, did you ever think about sending it to mediation first? He goes, no. I said, why not? He said, I didn't know it was available. And I was in business in 2013. And I sent him my book. So I'm saying, I did all the advertising I could do. I did what I could. But so I'm hoping to get that out there, because it really is, if it's a cause that has nothing to do with the care of the dog, which it didn't seem on any level that this dog was in any danger when it stayed week on, week off, until the infidelity was found, then it should have been the infidelity that was addressed and not the care of the dog.
Right.
You know,
right.
It
shouldn't be allowed in the courts they should have kicked that right out.
I will say this because I'm an attorney and I can. Attorneys will always bring adversarial proceedings because that's what they do. And
well, they get paid for doing it. So
I know. So let me check in with Sally. How are the girls in the snow? I could not believe I saw more snow.
Yeah, 6 inches.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah, it's like, really? We were like 60 degrees a week ago, and
I
now
know.
6 inches of snow, and the girls were just loving it, eating snow cones, playing, and just as happy as could be. I'm like, again, climate change. So, but they're just fabulous. I think they're having a late dinner and going to bed early.
Oh, that's what I'm having, a late dinner and going to bed early. Because I got to
Perfect.
get up early. Karen,
Yes, you
how are
do.
you, honey? How are you feeling? Are you all the way over the COVID you had?
I
Oh,
think so.
no.
How are you, Debbie? I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
you had
I think,
COVID. Yep.
yeah, second time round. But yeah, no, I think about 99% back to normal. So it's a friend of mine mentioned a wonderful so-called scientific fact that if you suffer COVID, your brain is supposed to shrink by 2%. Now, I always thought that's exactly what a bottle of wine will do anyway.
So either or.
Either or.
Oh my God.
I've always said that drinking wine increases your IQ points.
Well, while you're drinking it,
Absolutely.
maybe not afterwards, but while you're drinking it, you are much smarter. I firmly believe that. So let me weigh in with you guys. I know I went on my soapbox, and I know Susan did comment on it, but we have our Ds: disability, delay, disease, dementia, disaster, divorce, deployment. We have our Ds. It just seems to me that in the scheme of things, addressing the needs of the pet really means addressing the needs of the pet and not the disagreements of the parties. What do you think?
Yeah.
Well, there's an interesting flip of the coin, Susan, from what you were talking about, that dogs should not be, or animals should not be, treated as property. On the obverse, if dogs are not treated as property, there are a lot of states in the union that are now passing legislation in their state houses that say that, animals are now sentient beings, which we know they are, but but there is no such thing as ownership anymore. There's guardianship. Right there, your rights as the owner of the dog to make proper, thoughtful decisions for the health and well-being of your dog go poof. And a lot of that has been engendered by the animal rights as opposed to animal welfare community, who are really all about making political statements rather than, again, thinking about the needs of the animals. And so they have gotten the ears of various state and federal legislators. And, it's really up to us in the animal welfare community to educate those same legislators as to what the real deal is. But nonetheless, laws are being passed where you as an owner essentially have no rights over your dog.
Yeah, they're appointing attorneys. They're appointing attorneys
Exactly.
for the animals, for the
court-appointed attorneys.
And that's fine, except like in this case, there is this anthropomorphic ideal that they're holding. And if you don't meet that ideal, like I said, if you're a homeless person, or if you work and you leave your dog alone for 8 hours a day, that would maybe rise to the level of you not being able to have a dog. Even if you hire a dog walker to come in, it may not rise to the level because you're leaving that dog alone. So my thought is, we all know that dogs, cats, birds, horses are sentient beings. They should be lovingly cared for their entire life. There is absolutely no room for abuse ever. However, let's not make abuse things that people do that are not harmful to the pet, like having the dog ride in a crate in a car. So people might think that's really abusive. However, if you have an accident, that is like the safest place for the dog to be.
Absolutely. In fact, there was a Wheaton Terrier in Southern California who several years ago was not crated, not harnessed in the back seat to the seatbelt mechanism, and the car in which it was riding with its mom was rear-ended, and the dog went flying through the windshield and broke its back.
Mhm.
So there are different things that you can do to make sure they're safe. There are various things to do. However, if I choose to put it in a crate and you choose to clip it to a seatbelt, then, or even if you choose to let it ride free, that's your choice, and it's not animal abuse. We wish you would educate yourself on the reasons why, but like with masks, I'm wearing mine because I'm going for surgery tomorrow, and I don't know what kind of germ you have. However, I want to make sure I don't take it with me into surgery. So I'm wearing my mask. However, I don't care if you're not wearing a mask. That's fine. Just don't be upset with me because I'm wearing a mask. And that's the thing that's really getting difficult now. We're starting to build a dialogue on the best ways to care for pets. And quite frankly, there is no one best way to care for a pet. As long as the pet is well cared for, taken to the vet, and well cared for is a general statement that can be defined 875 different ways. Taken to the vet, fed, given fresh water, given a lovely place to live. And it's a Siberian Husky, it might be out in the house. If it's a Chihuahua, maybe it needs to be on a little tufted thing, who knows? But don't judge the book by its cover, because some dogs appreciate the freedom of being out in the yard. Some dogs don't. The one across the way from me does not. He barks all day that his owners leave him outside. Is that the best thing for him? Well, if he can't get out all day because they're working and they've made him in an enclosure that's safe and has a dog house, well, I mean, it's not abuse. It might not be the way I take care of my dog, and I might suggest things to him, but the dog is well fed, happy as can be, and doesn't know the difference. So let's not all think that. So I interviewed a guy named Dr. Peter Weinstein earlier this week, or no, last week. And he said to me, when this all shifted? And I said, no, he's going to be on a future podcast of Why Do Pets Matter. I would love him. I'm going to interview him about 100 times because he is brilliant. He said, the pet standing in our life, and Connie, you'll appreciate this, changed when they got easy to use flea and tick preventative. Because then people brought the dogs in the house and weren't infested with fleas and weren't bitten by fleas. So when the dogs had reliable flea and tick medication, they then came in the house, and then all bets were off. That's when animals became part of the family, companions. Everything that we see now only started when they had reliable flea and tick oral medication that was easy to administer.
Interesting.
I never thought of that, but it made so much sense. Yes, Larry.
I disagree. I think it was World War II when
Really?
the dads, the brothers, the uncles went off to war and they were gone. And then the dogs moved from the backyard into the house and they protected the family. So I respect what you're saying, but I disagree with that.
That might have been the first start, and then the fleas made everybody bring them in. Or the lack of fleas. What do you think, Kieran?
I'm actually going to agree with Sally, but I'm going to move the clock back about 2,000 years, because the sort of the first Shih Tzu and Chihuahuas sort of started life as status symbols with the Chinese court. So,
Exactly. And the Cavalier King Charles Spaniels with the British royalty.
But I would say that, but what we're really talking about is, when the tick medication and everything came along, then yes, there's an absolute explosion of
It
situations.
equalized the playing field. It wasn't like the
Completely.
little dogs. Yeah.
No, it was. The funny thing is that it's very much like historical mirror image reflection of marriage. That just before marriage, we had a thing called the King's Ransom, where the victorious kingdom would take the son or sons of the defeated kings as permanent what's the word, hostages, and they would be the first to get killed if there was a new invasion. So as time went on, there was a sort of kingdoms which were sort of equal power tried to find a way to keep a truce, and then it didn't go from the son, it went from the daughter. So, and then and before you know it, there was sort of offspring, and the lines were blurred, and then suddenly the local peasants wanted to get in on the act of marriage. And what was quite funny here was there was never enough money around to replicate the lavish weddings of the royals. So the economic transfer at the time was everybody in the village pay for a little bit of honey or give a little bit of honey. And this was the beginning of the first honeymoon.
Wow.
Interesting.
So what I see here is you start with the Chinese and the elites, and then suddenly there's a certain trend, but not everybody can get in on top of it, or not everybody would like to for practical reasons. And abracadabra, the tick and the flea comes, and yes, you have a situation from not just the emperors owning a dog, but there's I think it's every fourth house in the UK. Oh no, it's even more common in the US, isn't it? Is it every fourth house or fifth house? Something like that, anyway, close to that has a dog. So
Yeah, has a pet of some kind. Yeah, cat, dog, something. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the miracle and healing properties of tick medication and honey for tonight.
Well, I think I didn't know that, and I'm going to keep that in my pocket to tell people that, honeymoon came because people didn't have a lot of gifts to give, so they brought some honey, and that was the honeymoon. Fabulous.
Well, the qualities of honey, you say, are that
they're medicinal.
Medicinal. They keep for a long time, so durable, and just like coinage, they're fungible. In other words, you can sort of break them down a little bit and give them to your friend. So yeah, a very useful commodity.
Wow, that is really good. I'm sorry I started off, but not sorry, with such a passionate plea, but it just drove me nuts because if these people had taken time to just think about what was best for the dog, they would have put away.
Hello.
Nope. They would have put away their animosity, and that would have been something that would have been better for Max. Maybe not for them, but for Max. It just is tough things to do. So we've covered so much tonight, and all of it really has to do with the MAAP plan. We covered whether or not pets should, be decided by courts, who goes where. We recognize that in this day and age of 7 or 8 days, the value of pets has been internationally recognized, and so they are as much welcomed refugee as the people who own them. And we've discussed the transition of pets from backyard animals to in the back door animal, in the house animal, and out in the street eating dinner with you animal. We have thought that at the beginning, it may just be flea and tick medication, but I think there is an incredibly good and plausible reason to think that it started back in like the Ming Dynasty when pets were very wealthy people's possessions, and of course, well loved, and also coming in during the First and Second World War to protect the family while the men and sons were away, which makes a great deal of sense to me. They didn't have a MAAP plan. You need a MAAP plan. So, make sure you do. So as we wrap up, Susan, let me know what you think about today and what we talked about, and then I will go to Connie.
Yeah, it's just a lot to think about and absorb, and I'm still kind of trying to process everything. So it's just interesting because I had such an attachment to my dogs and always wanted to do what was in their best interest. And, and even using tick and flea stuff on dogs is kind of, you have to protect your animals from ticks and fleas, but are those products really safe for
do a lot of research. Some pets and some varieties of animals don't do well with flea and tick. Like Seresto collars work for some dogs, not for others. Oral medication works for some dogs, not for others. So you're absolutely right. It's an individual choice and nobody should be judged. And that shouldn't mean that you're not a good pet owner because you've chosen maybe just to use herbal, medication, lavender or eucalyptus for your dog because they have an adverse reaction. Everybody does what's best for their pet in their mind. And if the pet is thriving, or if you need to have a conversation, have a respectful conversation. Don't come in, guns blazing, saying you're not taking care of your dog. Say, love eucalyptus, love lavender. Maybe, if the dog's skin is really irritated by fleas and ticks, would we be able to maybe do that in a shampoo instead of just in a spot, whatever, just have a kind conversation. Connie, what do you take away from the craziness of tonight of the MAAP plant?
Well, it was very eclectic. but again, my head is just, and of course, coming from the national security professional background that I was in for over 30 years, my head is over in Ukraine. And at any rate, I am just extremely glad that the international community is recognizing that dogs who are being stuck in backpacks coming up the escalators in metros on the backs of their owners with the muzzles on, like we've all seen that picture that went viral, or little old ladies with a crate on each side taking out their cats and getting on the train with them for Poland. I am so grateful that is happening because in our own country, Hurricane Katrina, remember, in New Orleans, how many animals were left behind and how many people stayed with them and died? They all died.
Yep, that's another test. Absolutely. Like the war in 2014 in Ukraine and like Katrina, we all recognize that people won't leave their pets or they'll leave their pets and the pets will suffer. And we don't want either of that.
But it was after Katrina that local governments became a lot more enlightened and said, yes, the shelters are open to pets as well because they wanted to save the people. Right. So, there is a learning curve. But the thing that sticks in my mind is if there are civil insurrections in the United States, I do have friends, Wheaton friends in Alberta and British Columbia. So I'm up Interstate 5 if I have
That's right. So you're already set. Your MAAP plan is
I got it. Right.
Yes, Sally, how about you?
I'm like both of you. I'm just overwhelmed with everything. And I agree. And it's so wonderful to see that the pets actually can go out. So I agree with everything that's been said.
It just is such a heartwarming thing. So Kieran, you're going to wrap it up and bring it home.
Oh, I'm not sure I can tonight. It's I suppose the only thought I would have is it's like the entire way of looking at animals is going to shift. I don't know where that shift is going to go, but it's, they often say that you get the brightest light from the darkest corners, and this is probably a case where we might sort of be moving away from all these arguments about are pets property or not property and animal rights, but it could be something even simpler than that, where the first question is, even from a legislative point of view, it might end up as a case of, well, which part of the family dynamic is this a concrete part, if you follow me? In other words, how is the family structure reflected within the dog or the pet? Rather, it just might take a more prominent and I suppose a more analytical way before a judge could come to a decision. Not just a question of what's the best thing to do here, or even what's the best way to hive off the dog or give the dog to a third party, God forbid. But it could have. It's like if perhaps in family law, well, how does the family stick together, rather than just what is the best interest. So I have
Right.
a feeling there could be a strange shift somewhere that I don't quite see it yet, but it's one of these things where you know there's something there, but the full picture is yet to evolve.
It will evolve. That's a great ending, everyone. And Kieran, of course, you wrapped us up beautifully. So this is Deborah Hamilton. I'll see you next Wednesday with a new Lego part. And until then, kiss your pets for me. This is the MAAP Community Call. Don't forget to listen to the Why Do Pets Matter podcast or the Musings with Junie. And if you need my help, if you're in conflict with anyone, go to Hamilton Law and Mediation, soon to be Hamilton ADR, North Carolina. And until then, this is Deborah Hamilton. Take good care.